Thank you. All right, we have our last two folks coming up to the stage. We have Omar Blaik and we have Barry Mandel. And this is looking at sort of private development and the private sector, which, I think has really a critical role in both large and small placemaking in communities, these sort of large developments and the sort of smaller developments in a place, and an interesting role in sort of catalyzing things. And yet, I think that sometimes, when you bring private sector into the conversations, the folks are sort of like, oh, but there's a really interesting role, and I think you guys have both sort of explored this unique value that investing in the arts can have, and the sort of return on investment that you can actually see from those things. So I want to start with Omar, and I know you're sort of very familiar with how different sizes and types of developments are created both as sort of anchors and as sort of larger community planning process. And I'm sort of interested to hear if you have some examples where the arts have provided this sort of strong return on investment in these different types and sizes of developments that you've worked in and studied.
I think of placemaking maybe in a more broader way than just the arts, but we as a company have been involved in many cities around the country, figuring out how the space between anchor institutions and the cities can in fact be energized, and arts and placemaking becomes very much part of our toolkit that we use in these places. And as you said, you need to kind of size it up at the scale, either at a larger scale or a smaller scale. But there are 2 or 3 examples that come to mind, not just one, that may not be as relevant to the question of the art as placemaking, but I think in terms of civic engagement and placemaking in general. One example in San Jose University, wanting to rebuild its library and discovering that they can actually work collaboratively with the city and build a public library and an institutional library on the edge of campus as one facility. And the facility became a place where students go for retrieving their books, but also community members go for all sorts of learning opportunities and then performance spaces. And it became this amazing place that all sorts of ages and ethnic backgrounds and income levels aggregate and integrate. And I see that as one example. One project that we are working on in Detroit, in what we call the Tech Town section of Midtown Detroit, that is anchored by an incubator from Wayne State University, but we came to realize that none of the work that exists there come actually and manifest itself in the public realm. So we got a grant from ArtPlace, and we created this research around, can we bring a fab lab anchored around a living room to bring researchers and badge manufacturers, and some of you may know Shinola, which is a watch manufacturer and a bike manufacturer that is in the same district. How can we connect and bring all of them out? So we are in fact working on our version of the innovation district, and what we are working on is bringing a parking lot, turning it into an active open public space that is going to be programmed by the incubator and by the Fab Lab, and a co-working space in a way that I think we bring the community together. So those are 2 examples, and there are many others, but I'll stop here.
Great. And first of all, I want to thank Barry for everything he's done to support this program today, which I think has been wonderful. And so since you're on stage, I have to embarrass you. And I know that you've integrated arts into many of your developments from the start, and you've sort of been thinking in this space for a long time, and now you're sort of looking and thinking about innovation districts and really sort of becoming a model for integrating arts into private development. So can you share some of your projects where you've really seen that success of the integration and what sort of value that's provided?
Sure. Developers are known to build buildings, and certainly they can change the skyline of a city by the architecture that they bring forth. And I think bricks and mortar are great, and I think that the architecture does provide benefit to the city, but that's just a building. And the real opportunity for a developer is to be able to develop community. And what better way to develop community than to invest in art and artists? It is really one of the ways to create vibrancy in a city, and that's the thing that developers, in the end, want, because a more vibrant city means that buildings will have a greater and longer impact in the future. A couple of the examples that I have is that one, as part of our developments, we actually have 5 public parks. We feel that it's really important to bring the community in as part of our development and also infuse art within our development. And so one of our public parks is Burns Commons. And right now it has a Beverly Pepper. She just won the award for from the Sculpture Institute, a Lifetime Achievement Award. But that's just the beginning of Burns Commons. Right now, we're right in the beginning stages of going ahead and curating 4 to 6 more temporary pieces. Not all art has to be permanent. Temporary creative placemaking is very important. And over on the right side, it's in addition to parks that we've been able to develop, sometimes you have things that are empty, like empty lots. So we have the Marcus Prize winner, Sue Fujimoto, who just won the Marcus Architectural Prize. He's working with UWM students. And right across from Burns Commons on Prospect and Ogden, we're going to have a temporary installation of landscaped undulating ribbons that'll be there all summer. Now, you asked what the value is of this. And, I can't tell you exactly how to break it down, but I do know that we've been able to quantify that because of what we've done with our developments, and we think it's because we've involved artists in art in our communities, that we are achieving anywhere from 12 to 16% premium over our competitors. And what a great thing. I mean, to do something that's fun and still make money at it.
That can be really important and valuable. And, I think there is something in the private sector where I feel like with the market research that's done and with the sort of sense of trying to get the maximum value out of a development, in some ways you're almost thinking about what people want in a really interesting way and in a different way than maybe a community development corporation might think about what people want. So, I mean, I'm just sort of, and this is off the cuff, so, but what do people want in communities? What does the market say that people want?
I mean, my observation, and I think they should be just observations and not nothing more scientific than that, is that it's really ironic how we end up in a social framework that the more we climb the ladder in society, we get to be more segregated and more separated from each other. And in fact, all what we want is to communicate and interact with each other. When you think of all of us when we go to Europe, or we talk about our trip to Madrid or to Barcelona or anywhere else, it's about the busyness and about the fact that we can sit in a cafe and watch other people and so on. And then you come here and you find that actually the more we have a higher income, we want to segregate and we want to separate ourselves. And I think, we are as a country getting to be a little bit more sophisticated than before, and discovering that in fact human interaction is such an enriching opportunity. If you take the subway or a trolley to your work, you are inevitably going to meet people who are not looking like you and who are of different backgrounds and different income levels. But if you take your car to work, you are isolated in a bubble. And that is a very different experience for the half-hour commute if you are going to take a subway or a car. Similarly, if you are going to have lunch in your cafeteria at work, or you are going to have it outside. So my sense is people, actually all of us human beings, we want more interaction. And the more we interact, the more we feel enriched. So we as developers and people in the private sector, we ought to be thinking about creating those places rather than creating a single-use office building or a single-use housing. We need the mix, and the more you mix it, the better it is.
Barry, what do people want?
Well, I can tell you that was said extraordinarily well.
Just an observation.
And it's more than an observation, because it's absolutely true. I mean, we are servicing many of the millennials, and what they want is a real community. And they want to be with one another. They want spontaneous interaction that leads to other connections. I think that they're starved for it, in part because when they say they talk to somebody, they text them. They actually like to see somebody else's face every once in a while. And that's what we're trying to do, is build developments that have a certain sense of connectivity, so that they can not only live in that development, but be connected to all things within the city.
I think that's so powerful. Are there other things sort of about the development process and placemaking sort of in that private sector that, the arts can play a different role than what they're currently playing, as far as contributing to the way that developers imagine a new development, or the way that they interact with the community during that sort of engagement, the initial taking it out to the public? What are some of those opportunities that you see available?
I would bring an example from my years at the University of Pennsylvania, and I was responsible for the bricks and mortar, as Barry would say, the facilities and the real estate side. And I ended up hiring a person as a content manager. And the president at the time came to ask me, so what is a content manager? I said, well, it's not just about the bricks and mortar. We need to really worry about what's going on inside. And we really started to connect the film studies program with the student groups to actually occupy some of the abandoned storefronts that we had on a commercial corridor, and create student arts and create galleries and the like. So my sense, the lesson I take from that is, as a developer involved in real estate development, the arts are what brings the brick and mortar to life. And you need to somehow be thinking about how do you reach to philanthropy, how do you reach to community, how to use public subsidies to create the content that really creates the vitality that Barry is talking about.
It's something that gets me up in the morning, because it's just really the exciting part of real estate development. For example, having empty space in your building and be able to give it to artists for an exhibition, and to be able to go ahead and make that space that would otherwise be empty all of a sudden have a purpose, and at the same time being able to help somebody else it's an amazing thing. And then to be able to program and program and program with all sorts of artists, and even for our grand openings, for example, we've taken an initiative to have filmmakers go ahead and make films, and then we show those films in our models as they're coming through, to be able to show, one, the artists and what we have in Milwaukee, and that it is part of our community, and two, an absolute great entertainment feature.
That gets me up in the morning too.
Yeah.
So I think we're coming to the end of the interviews. I do want to give just a couple of overarching themes really quickly, and then we'll turn it back for our final little case study, and then we'll move on to the next part where you'll actually sort of get to interact and get up and stop listening to all of us on stage talk. But some of the things that I just thought were interesting from each of the thing. One, this notion of sort of accelerating returns by collaborating. So instead of diminishing returns, you actually can increase the returns that you're getting by collaborating outside of your sector. Where the sort of lines blur between artists and other types of sectors, that's sort of where the magic happens. This changing the idea of risk in placemaking and in community development, in the how the government operates and how we think about creating a future. What are the risks that we want to take? How can the arts help us get there? How the arts can give us something to root for in a community, right? They give us that sense of pride. How the arts have helped sort of change notions of what success is. We heard that in the community development session. Again, people want to communicate. People want pride. People want to interact. And I think people want a real community. I think these are all things. I think hopefully what each of these conversations has showed is both why it's valuable to take these sort of creative and arts-based approaches to problem solving and development, and then a little bit of how that's actually been done and just some ideas to sort of spark you about how people are actually implementing those on the ground. And you'll see, it comes at it from every sector. So there's no reason that I think anybody in this room, isn't and cannot get involved in, creative placemaking strategies and arts-based strategies, and ultimately creating a better future for your community. So I hope if this has sort of been a little bit of an inspiration and given you a sense of what's going on around the country and in Milwaukee, and in this sort of hybrid zone that we're all exploring around this term creative placemaking. So thank you for listening, and thank you to all of our presenters. And I just want to say thank you to the Greater Milwaukee Committee for hosting this. We're not done though yet. So I'm going to turn it back over, and we'll keep on going with the rest of the day.
Creational Trail, the Avenue. Can we go somewhere, have our imagination activated, have an experience deep and felt and communal and exciting, and go back to that place after the spectacle's gone, the tent's folded back up, and still feel a difference in our experience of that place?
As part of Creational Trails, Milwaukee will launch The Avenue on June 14, 2014. The Avenue is a series of installations, performances, and events by regional artists and placemakers in and around West Wisconsin Avenue in downtown through October 2014.
As a downtown, Wisconsin Avenue from Art Museum to Milwaukee River works. West of the river, it's floundered. We have beautiful buildings, some things to do, but no flourishing.
The Avenue encourages connections between this downtown Main Street to other nearby civic resources, such as the Milwaukee Intermodal Station, Père Marquette Park, and the Milwaukee Public Museum, and to nearby neighborhoods. Key community partners include the City of Milwaukee and the Wisconsin Avenue Milwaukee Development Corporation.
How do we encourage broad support and understanding of provocative and impactful projects? How do we account for diversity of aesthetics and values in community engagement?
With the dual focus on the development of creative placemaking opportunities and the activation of Milwaukee's millennial generation, Milwaukee is a social architecture firm that inspires a collision of all Milwaukee has to offer.
What is social architecture, and what's firm about it?
Put simply, social architecture is a conscious design of a space,
Milwaukee,
that encourages a desired range of social behaviors,
how people work, live, and play,
leading towards a goal.
to make Milwaukee more awesome.
Milwaukee's programs and initiatives motivate Milwaukeeans to look critically at the city we live in, to realize its potential, and empower folks to shape a city that we all want to be part of.